Everybody. Now I can start. Thank you very much, Tanja. Good afternoon, everybody. A warm welcome here from Brussels, MC Academy for International Legal Studies. I'm very happy that you all are watching us or watching us later. We have a great panel of four, I must say, young experts on a young and new topic. First of all, thank you to Sana for helping us setting this up, and Professor Adnan Amkanbaino, who is the director of MC Academy. He called me this morning and said he had an issue we couldn't solve neither by smart contracts nor blockchain today because it relates to his teeth. So he has an urgent appointment at the dentist, but I think he'll watch later on and then kick me in the bum for being so blunt sharing this information. So thank you very much for being here. We have a very interesting topic today, which builds on what we discussed last time. Last webinar, we spoke about blockchain in general and how this might radically change the legal profession as we know it. We found out, and listeners and students afterwards actually sent us their comments telling us that they want to know more about a specific issue which relates to the smart contract and how this actually could transform their very own career path. So that's the focus of our session today. And let's start just right with the topic itself. Lawyers like definitions. So what I think we should do first is get everybody's view and understanding on smart contracts. What is it, their nature and scope? I will introduce our four speakers as we go along. I'll start with Tanja, because Tanja sent us a definition of a smart contract. Tanja, you're running something called the Blockchain Alliance Europe, which I think you will explain a bit to us while we go on the questions in the seminar. You're in Italy today on a conference, normally based in Slovenia, so we are actually European and international in scope. Olga has dialed in at 4 o'clock in the morning from California, so this is a real effort. Starting with what is blockchain definition. I'm just trying to find Tanja's definition, which says smart contracts are computer programs which allow for the automatic transfer of digital assets between parties based upon pre-specified conditions. So I say this again, smart contracts are computer programs which allow for the automatic transfer of digital assets between parties based upon pre-specified conditions. Adrien, you're the expert on the tricky and nitty-gritty bits of blockchain. Would you like to just, start from this definition and tell us in your own words what you understand under smart contracts and possibly which real examples in real life you have come across so far? Adrien, can you hear us?
So maybe before Adrien gets back online, I can tell you, I'll give you my interpretation of it. This was, by the way, I'm Olga Mack. I am a lawyer in the United States. Just, I guess, to fit in, I was born in Ukraine. When I was 13, I immigrated to the United States. So I went to law school in the United States. I've been practicing law in the United States for almost 15 years. I've been a general counsel at various startups. I've been a lawyer at Visa and a well-known Silicon Valley law firm. I like to explain smart contracts as a very sophisticated and secure vending machines. So at the core, it can do three things. Smart contract is they codify logic that is in business agreement, and at the core, it does three things. It stores rules, it automatically verifies them, and then it self-executes. So as I mentioned, it's kind of like a very sophisticated and highly secure vending machine. So for example, the vending machine stores the rule that if I put, and I'm going to use dollars, not euros, just because it's a little bit more natural to me, that if I pay $1.50, I'll get a snack of my choice. Once I put $1.50, it verifies that it's not $1.25, that it is in fact $1.50. And then upon verifying it, it executes it automatically and dispenses my favorite snack. If you can kind of think of this process being used in other settings and using code, that's effectively what smart contracts are. They're very sophisticated and very secure vending machines. So that's the definition that I usually use. I can see that my co-panelist is now back and may be able to give some examples.
Just going back on the definition, are they only covering digital assets? So are they only smart contracts where the matter of the contract is something digital, or are they all? Because that was what struck me in the definition. I always thought, you know, maybe we can have smart contracts for other objects as well.
Can I just jump in here on this definition?
Please,
because
please. That was your definition.
Actually,
you need to defend it now.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, you can exchange anything of value, because I'm from Blockchain Alliance Europe. What we are an economic interest grouping that actually combine different companies that implement or develop blockchain, also smart contracts. And in several cases, we've seen that they intend to use smart contracts to avoid escrow, as we know it for now. So you can exchange actually everything of value. It's the same as Olga described. You have to have a digital asset. I don't know, with Ethereum, you can buy in tokens in the ICO initial coin offerings. But otherwise, I don't know, one of our members, Elipay, wants to create a secondary market because they are an e-commerce platform, and they will use it as an escrow. So people will exchange digital assets for, I don't know, a used phone, a used something that you don't need. So it is not just exchange between two digital assets.
Okay, Adrien, have you anything to add so far? Or shall we move on with elaborating a bit further on the concept of smart contract? Sorry, we can't hear you, Adrien. You have to speak up to the microphone and or unmute yourself.
So maybe while Adrien unmutes himself, I can talk a little bit about the digital assets. You know, I find that when people discuss blockchain, they talk about abstract things. Things are named a little bit oddly. So blockchain sounds like a movie from Dwayne Rock Johnson. Smart contracts are really not contract or smart. And then we talk about digital assets and nobody knows what the heck they are. So let's make it a little bit more real. You know, the concept of digital assets has been around for quite a while. It is not a blockchain concept. It is widely used, for example, in internet. So, for example, my digital reputation on LinkedIn is a digital asset. It is very important in my professional future. This is how I get jobs, for example. That's how, in fact, I've been found for this panel. So that is an example of digital asset. A very well known example in blockchain of a digital asset is CryptoKitties. I usually, when I speak in the room, ask people to raise their hand and tell me they know what they are. But in a nutshell, they're a picture of really, really cute kittens. And what they show, the experiment of having CryptoKitties, is that those kind of digital assets can have value and people can trade them and they can appreciate. And if you use your imagination and instead of, you know, CryptoKitties, you use reputation or your health records or art or music files. All of those things and much, much more could be digital assets. All of those things could be traded automatically using smart contracts. Adrien, were you able to figure out how to use volume? And
yeah, he's on. No, not. So I think we were working on this.
If that doesn't work so far, maybe I can chip in on the definition of smart contracts. I think we're still being quite unclear on what smart contracts actually are, because there's a fundamental difference between smart contracts and blockchain. And I think throwing both of them into the same pot is not the right way forward. Smart contracts have the term was first coined in 1994 by Nick Szabo, before blockchain existed, years before blockchain existed. And smart contracts as an automatic enforcement mechanism or automatic execution exists every single day in all of our lives already, and it has for decades. For example, all online banking is automatic execution of contracts. If you just look at smart contracts purely functionally, then all of these are smart contracts as well. If you look at smart contracts as something that happens exclusively on a blockchain, then it's a very novel concept. However, the term itself originated way before the blockchain. And I think the blockchain can implement the trust component, which is then decentralized or distributed. But a smart contract in itself, as an automatic execution, has been around for a long time. For example, all and any online banking.
Yeah. Actually, Clemens, thank you very much. You actually anticipated my next question, but I'm not running out of them, don't worry. So the clear, I think, important distinction we're making here is that, if I understood correctly, not all smart contracts necessarily have anything to do with the blockchain. So there can be, this is basically like an automated code or coding system, some like mechanism can be run on a normal computer, on a normal program. And a blockchain is, I would say, the next level for smart contracts, actually having some of the advantages Olga just mentioned in the digital world, scaling and so on. Now, actually, we solved a technical issue by rather physical means. Adrien, welcome to the table here. So he says a quick hello. And actually, to introducing him, Adrien is a lawyer who is also a coder. He is able to do something I very much adore, and I'm not able to do. He knows interesting languages like Ruby on Rails, which I understand is a very popular language still. So give us a bit your insight on why are you actually teaching how to do smart contracts on the blockchain to students?
Yeah, so thank you for the introduction. What we are basically doing together with a software developer is teaching lawyers and legal professionals how to sign the first smart contract on the blockchain using the Ethereum implementation of the blockchain. So we are rolling out a few workshops on that topic, and we are very happy to see the response. Lawyers seems to like that and to go a bit underneath and scratch the surface of what is code actually and how a smart contract really works.
Can you give us an example? What smart contract you actually coded last week?
Yeah, so what we are just designing a very basic crop insurance smart contract where farmers subscribe to the insurance, and if it is freezing at one day, they receive automatically the remedy back from the insurer, and it's all automated. We designed that with the lawyers. Very interesting exercise is that we take a real contract written in plain English with all the boilerplate clauses, and we translate those into the smart contract. And then for a lot of instances, the lawyers realize, well, that clause is not going to make any sense, or it's going to be unenforceable in the smart contract. And so that's a very interesting exchange to see between the legal world and then the world of blockchain and smart contracts.
Very interesting. Are there other user cases? Does anybody want to talk about a user case? I think, Tanja, you mentioned something called Eligma. It sounds very futuristic to me. Would you like to tell us a bit what what you see as or what you know as user cases where actually smart contracts are implemented and used.
Of course, Enigma, they are actually an ICO. I mentioned it also a bit earlier. They are an e-commerce platform. They are AI-driven and also blockchain based, and they have different features. They also developed already a wonderful payment system that is called EliPay. They have an IE that is called Eli and actually can talk with you and help you shop. But they are also planning to do that secondary market when people on the platform can exchange, I don't know, actually can buy used things like, I don't know, telephones, like maybe also cars. So whatever you have in your home that is used and you want to resell. And they will use smart contracts to do that. And here is one thing that can happen. There are 3 ways of closing the proposal. They can have a positive closing and closing with an alternative proposal and also annulling. But there something can happen that can also happen on eBay or on Amazon or wherever those secondary markets exist, is that you receive a phone. Actually, payment happens, and then you later find out that that phone is not working properly. What to do then? And then a dispute can happen, and they are thinking a lot about how solving those disputes on the platform. And I think this is a job for lawyers, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, if I can just expand on that, you are really touching on a real pain of smart contracts, which is that well, by definition, those smart contracts execute themselves, so there has to be absolutely no uncertainty. That's why you use a smart contract for. Well, there are going to be real-life situations where smart contracts will have sort of unintended consequences, or simply the owner of the smart contract or the conceiver didn't think about that use case, and then you end up in a situation where you basically have no choice as a contractor to that smart contract. Smart contract will execute itself, and it will have no remedy except those that are foreseen in the smart contract itself. And if no remedies are foreseen, then you just can't do anything about it.
Yeah, can I jump in on that? Because we have seen some problems with badly written smart contracts in initial coin offerings when people we read about, got double coins or got no coins or whatever. And if they have not foreseen that in the smart contract, they really had a lot of problems, and some of those projects even closed. I mean, they're not operating anymore. And yes, how to solve this? Who is here also to blame?
I think we previously had the differentiation between digital assets and real assets in the real world. And I think here we have to differentiate, because Tanja, you just said smart contracts can be applied to everything. Right here, I would disagree. I would say that the control of digital assets is way easier with smart contracts, because with real assets or with tangible assets, even if you have a smart contract, for example, I go to Enigma and I sell a book. If I have a smart contract and the smart contract is fulfilled, I still physically have to go to the post office and send the book to somewhere. That is absolutely irrelevant whether the contract was smart or not. If I have a digital asset, on the other hand, the transfer is automatized, and there is a real problem. And with blockchain, there's the problem of permanence. That if I want to change the contract or amend the contract, how do I do that? And with physical assets, still there's always something in the physical world which you have to do even after the contract is executed. With digital assets, there is no more correspondence in the digital world, so that's a lot more quicker, and there's a lot more risk associated with it. Well, depending on which side of the contract you're on, there's more risk on the physical asset side or on the digital asset side.
Clemens, if you allow me, I'm very simply, you know, a simple lawyer. I just try to understand the basics. So if we have a contract, normally, as in most jurisdictions, we have two declarations of wills. So each party states the will, and if we have an overlap, it makes click. Then we have a contract. So very, very broad concept. I hope my professors don't kick me. So now this element of overlapping wills is basically replaced, if I understand correctly, by an automated, a self-automated mechanism. It's a bit like if you think about a testament, you know, while I'm still alive, I say, if I die on the condition I die, this and this and this should happen. The moment I'm dead, I can't change it anymore. So it's very easy. I like the example because it's a very easy example Adrien just gave. You know, something happening depending on the condition of the temperature. So now I tell you a little anecdote. Here in Belgium, we have the coast, and people go to the coast in summer. Coast normally very cold, and we have the Brussels weather forecast. Some Monsieur Nicolas is always telling that it's very warm at the weekend, and then you go there and it's actually very cold. So what do I mean? Maybe he's linked to the tourism office. That's really my secret interpretation of this. So just illustrating this, you know, by making some automatic mechanism depending on an element you can't influence, linking it, you know, what actually happens if we don't agree on the factual input? So meaning, you know, temperature, of course, in this case, can be taken here in Brussels or can be taken at the shore. If the contract just says, okay, we need the average or whatever you can define, and this you have to stick with it, as you said. You know what actually this I think personally is a bit of a pain. Well, I would be really reluctant, you know, to give away control to a contract, because then, you know, the moment I gave this mechanism into the contract, that I can't change it anymore. I'm out of my autonomy, so to say, of a contractual autonomy. And I know from Clemens that you thought about this deeply before, or anybody. I think for me it's a real problem. You know, yes, it's nice to have automation and speed and transparency. However, you know, giving away control, isn't a contract all about parties free control what to stipulate in the contract? And once you sign away, you know, to the machine, to the, is Eligma a name? I don't know. To the whatever the little creature is called there, I don't feel very happy. Can you help me there? Why should I sign away my autonomy to a contract mechanism?
Certainly. I mean, first of all, this is just, as a lawyer, I get very, very upset about this, that smart contracts are called contracts, and I passionately defend this point that smart contracts have absolutely nothing to do with contracts. Legally speaking, I don't think they are contracts. It is possible to engage in a contract through a smart contract. However, the smart contract itself, the code, is just provisions in the contract, and the contract will exist outside of the code. You do sign away some of your authority. For example, Ethereum smart contracts on the blockchain, they are completely separate accounts, and the moment you have uploaded your code, you have no more control over this account, which is then named a smart contract. Mm-hmm. And the problem you just named, namely where do you get your information from, is something that completely destroys the purpose of putting a smart contract onto a blockchain. A blockchain is a decentralized or distributed service, so therefore it is trustless. You don't have a central party you have to trust. By requiring an external party that gives you information whether or not your contract has been fulfilled is, again, a centralized party. And therefore all the benefits of having a decentralized blockchain are gone, because you still have to rely on this centralized party. And that is a large problem with smart contracts on a blockchain, because the benefits you gain from putting the whole thing on a blockchain is the decentralization. You have no more corruption problems. You don't have to trust anyone. But where do you get your information from? For example, the example you just gave, the temperature. How do you know whether the temperature was actually there? You can, of course, trust the Belgian weather service. But then if one person is unhappy with the execution of the contract, they will go back and say, well, the temperature actually wasn't that what the Belgian weather service said. And then either you agree beforehand, you agree very precisely where you get your information from, or there will be an entire new area of dispute just simply focused on the information was wrong. So I think lawyers will actually still have the same amount of work, just the work will shift from what does my contract say over to where do I get my information from.
So I would like to add that there's a couple of things that have been said. So I'm going to return to each of the speakers. I agree with Clay that it's fundamentally hard to call smart contracts contracts. I have a link to a very good Duke Law Review article that talks about smart contracts, talks about contracts and how they really enlighten each other. I think the best way, as he described, is to think of it as provisions of smart contracts. But the terminology is very confusing, and I would really not hang up on it. We started with applications, and there are plenty of applications. Probably the most prevalent application, as Tanja has alluded to, ICOs. In fact, the predominant number of applications of smart contracts are in ICO. Hopefully, we can graduate to more exciting case uses. So let me give you the case use that I'm, for example, very excited about. And I'm really excited about smart contracts and frankly, blockchain that will solve problems that have not been able to be solved before. So there is a small team in Canada and a couple of engineers in Canada, Germany, and Australia that is using smart contracts, create decentralized community marketplace that connects urban farmers, landowners, and consumers. So they put leasing agreements on blockchain and making them enforceable through smart contracts. So this way, if I own a building in San Francisco and I have roof access, but I don't use it for anything, I can basically lease it to somebody who will grow tomatoes and will figure out a way for them to pay me through smart contracts. So this way, this company uses smart contracts to promote urban farming, making it easy, maybe even profitable, make our cities more sustainable, minimize the impact on the environment, and maybe even create jobs. So that, to me, that's a very interesting example to solve the problem of our cities not being sustainable enough. And it's a problem that has not been adequately solved, for example, with the tools that we already have. However, talking about the applications of smart contracts, even in law, is a little premature. There are quite a few problems with the technology, namely security, Tanja has alluded to that, scalability, interoperability, all of those, what I call their plumbing. It's, when you build a house, plumbing is probably something that is not exciting. However, if you don't have plumbing, you can take shower, bathroom is not an option. No matter how beautiful the house is, it's not an inhabitable house. Well, same thing with smart contracts. There's quite a few problems with Ethereum-based contracts. There are other smart contracts that are being developed. They have number of plumbing issues, and a lot of very smart people are trying to address them before we can build applications that are really exciting. So I work at a company where we very actively solve security problems. Tanja, for example, has alluded that, because they are pieces of code, any small or big change can affect, for example, in the context of ICO, whether or not you get double coins, no coins, or, for example, as in the case of DAO incident, 65 million disappears. So, those problems have to be solved before we can build on them. But fundamentally, the promise of smart contracts, I don't think necessarily to replace lawyers. I very much agree with Cleo on that. If anything, it can, it can give us another tool so we can be more creative. Our jobs can be much, much more exciting. We can, in addition to having excitement, can also impact the world and change long-standing problems that have not been able to be solved before.
Thank you, Olga. Just to give some information, Clemens just mentioned here. There is apparently an article summarizing the contracts versus smart contracts concept. Does anybody have can tell us where it's published, or if we can distribute it afterwards, if somebody wants to read this article?
So I posted that article in our chat, and it's a law review article, so it's not a novel, it's not a light read. It's like 67 or 57 pages of single space written by a lawyer, but it's thoroughly talks about more smart contracts and contracts, and to what extent they're overlapping, and what kind of problems they pose for the judicial system. It's written in Duke Law Review article. It's a very reputable law review. Should you have a sleepless night, I highly recommend that you read this. I do think that it gives you a lot of perspective, and if you can share it with the audience afterwards or in the channel, that would be very helpful.
Very good. Maybe we move to another point, which is sometimes already seen in connection with smart contracts, which I think can be labeled. Clemens came up with this expression, oracling. I think we briefly touched about it. You know. Because all the inputs are not clear, we are still actually, how you say, we are actually codifying elements of uncertainty into a contract, and I think we can really debate this. Adrien here has founded his organization called Law is Code, and I know you're very passionate about also influencing lawyers, or actually inspiring lawyers to code themselves, but where do you see the limits currently? You know, or I mean, I'm still talking very abstract. Can you give examples actually where you say somebody has tried a smart contract and it became clear quite quickly, not because of the technology used, but because of this uncertainty in there, that there were really limits. And as Clemens said, we need actually to have a contract out of the smart contract.
Can I jump in on this a little bit? When the smart contracts are executed properly, when the code is written properly, there is no uncertainty. When an A happens, a B happens. I don't see there an uncertainty, and they have actually. Now we talked that. Yeah, the plumbing, I agree with Olga. This is the blockchain is starting to evolve. This is like the Alta Vista of our browsers, if you remember that one that was glitchy and that looked really ugly. And something similar is now happening in the blockchain technology space. But, you know, smart contracts can really help improving society in different aspects. For example, small businesses cannot afford escrow for every payment for their services. With smart contracts, this will be automated, and they will save money that way, and they will get paid for the services that they provide. And that is one of the great impacts on the society that I don't want to be left out today. That's it.
Well, I think it's very easy to say that if A happens, then B happens, and if everything goes right, then of course the contract is executed. So if everything goes right, then of course everything goes right. The question is, when does A happen, and when has A happened? And for that, you have to trust someone. And smart contracts on the blockchain rely principally on a non-trust system, and then you introduce trust again. And then either you say people who engage in smart contracts just don't care, and then they use a centralized body that they trust in again for the oracling, or you introduce a new decentralized fact confirming system. And for example, then you ask the blockchain community again whether A has occurred. And so you could decentralize the question whether something has occurred again. For example, the example Adrien gave earlier, the crop insurance. If you have the question, did it freeze last night? And then if it froze last night, then the people who have the insurance on crops will get money. And then you can either ask the Belgian Weather Service, or you can ask the blockchain community who live in the area whether it froze last night, and not just in the area but in general. And if enough people agree, then yes. But then the problem with that is how would these people know? A lot of the times, whether a contractual obligation or clause has been fulfilled is extremely technical. And so in the end, there's great danger that you will, for the verification of certain provisions, need centralized parties to verify it.
Would you like to comment on that?
No, it's very well summarized. So indeed, you have to be, if you are going to rely on for a condition of the smart contract to fulfill, to rely on the opinion of an oracle, then you need to make sure that you choose the oracle wisely. If it's going to be a centralized oracle, like the weather service, you have to specify which one. You have to specify the time of the day where you are going to pick the temperature. You have to pick up the exact location place. So that needs to be, of course, that needs to be verified. And once such remove as many uncertainties as possible. And then you have to ensure that, of course, the oracle is truly independent and impartial in its in the determination of the condition.
And I think this uncertainty reduction is classical lawyers' work, and therefore I'm not too worried about lawyers going away. But the lawyer will now have to be very technical in very scientific areas, for example. And I think this is work that lawyers have not been used to, because right now there's a lot of work with codes of law, with case law, but the question of how do you reduce uncertainty on the execution stage might be something that will come way more into focus with the rise of smart contracts than it is right now.
So I agree with Clemens that lawyers will have to be more technical, or maybe more technically proficient, right? They don't necessarily have to become programmers, but they definitely have to have a working knowledge and being able to follow and maybe do relatively simple things. I passionately disagree that lawyers are not used to being technical. That really just depends on what kind of practice you have. I started as a patent litigator. I know a lot about a lot of very complicated technology, just generally speaking, and my job was to explain it to jury what it is. So lawyers that have been, for example, in licensing, have been highly technical. I've been building startups in the last 8 years or so, and I have to say it's really hard to separate the legal practice from the really obscure technology that your team is building. And in fact, in my experience, for those of us who are considered ourselves tech lawyers, and I'm a tech lawyer by design. I went to law school because I wanted to be a tech lawyer. I, at some point, was an engineer. Both of my parents are engineers. For a lawyer, I'm really good at math and fairly technical. And there are very few technical concepts that I would not understand with a good explanation. So there are some of us who have been technology lawyers who are highly technical and are capable to figure out all kinds of complex technologies. So I think, to your point, more of us will have to be proficient and learn technology, and the law schools will have to adapt. I agree with you that being a good lawyer, meaning being able to read, write, and argue, are going to be table stakes skills. There are other skills that need to be developed, including technical proficiency, but also there are other skills like emotional intelligence and ability to network. All of those skills need to be present in a 21st century law school, and I am absolutely positive that lawyers will be able to bend their minds around it.
Thank you, Olga. Before coming to the lawyer skills, which will be the last and I think one of the key parts of our discussion, let's round up on the concept of. We have one question of actually currently he's Felipe Machato. He's currently president of ELSA International. Felipe, thank you very much for sending us your question. Felipe is asking, he's mentioning that there are today some contracts you normally do at a notary, or like in real estate, or where actually you need you need to have a notarization just for the contract to become valid, to enter into force. So his question is, do you think that it will one day be possible to replace all contracts written by smart contracts? So a very general question, looking into the future. What do you say to that? So notaries are out of work then. We will abolish them. I think Estonia is already doing just that. Felipe, go to Estonia, you won't find any notaries there, but that's just a side remark, please. Clemens.
So I would say no, because I'm passionate about smart contracts not being contracts. I think a lot of the functionality that contracts have can be implemented into smart contracts. However, just like not all smart contracts are on the blockchain, I think we have to differentiate it here that not all applications of blockchain in law are smart contracts. For example, replacing registers, such as would be with quite often what you do with a notary, like for example, a contract for buying a house and then you go and register the house. I think that would be an implementation of blockchain in law without actually being a smart contract. So I think you can replace a lot of the proof requirement required in law with blockchain technology. Not all of that will be smart contracts, and not all contracts can be implemented. Not all the functionality of contracts can be implemented in smart contracts. For example, the duties of care, for example, you just simply cannot put them into a smart contract, because if you have a smart contract that says you now have to be very careful in what you do, congratulations, it's just not possible to enforce that, and it doesn't matter whether it's smart or not.
No, it's well summarized, and I think that so smart contracts have a great opportunity to expand with digital assets, but there's still been kind of a missing link with the real world. How to make sure that the smart contract can execute itself in the real world? That's a very big challenge, and so it's I mean normal contracts have also a great future ahead. They won't disappear and won't be replaced by smart contracts altogether.
I believe that smart contracts will not replace notaries or won't affect registries, but identity on blockchain will, and maybe combined also with smart contracts. But I believe that identity is much more important than smart contracts in this regard. Sweden is doing also something. Last week I was in Stockholm, and they are trying to do land registry on the blockchain, and they are doing it with something with the signatures and so on. They are actually at the beginning, but I believe that the identity on blockchain will be much more important than smart contracts.
We have a surprise guest now to announce. We are just having had Juan, sorry, Juan. My Spanish is a bit rusty currently. Juan, you're dialing in from Luxembourg, and you run a platform on blockchain. That's what I heard. Can you reveal yourself behind your picture and maybe talk to us? Hello, Juan. Hola. Not there? No, he's hiding. Huh? He's afraid now. He's intimidated. No, Sana. We're working.
He's camera shy.
No, maybe once he joins, we will give him the floor. At least he knows now. We know about him. Jumping right into the thing, I think you just prepared the case. You know, what will they replace, notaries or not? Especially we have, I mean, Clemens. Maybe giving you the floor a bit. Clemens co-founded something I like very much, not because I'm a German by origin, but because I see more and more student peer groups basically preparing themselves for the new world of legal technology. Interestingly, you're doing it by yourself, and it's not a kind of part of the official university program. Clemens, you co-founded MLTech, a legal tech association in Munich, and you're young, you're a student, and as Adrien, you're just at the beginning of your legal career. So I think for you, it's really not just an academic issue we are discussing here, but it's really of direct impact. I think now we learned today that there might be new job descriptions like the blockchain dispute resolution specialist or something like this, or the architect. Would you like to give us a bit your view on, where do you see the journey going? What is in for lawyers? And actually, because I'm the devil's advocate today, Adrien here is trying, he's actually selling courses now, he's offering courses to teach lawyers coding skills. And I already subscribed. I will learn how to program a smart contract with Adrien in November in Brussels. So to be kind of critical about this, Clemens, do you think all lawyers now need to go to Adrien and learn coding, or how shall lawyers today actually deal with this topic? What is your advice in Munich to your fellow students coming to the association?
So my advice to my fellow students would be to do as much outside of your law studies as you can, because I think this is a very country-specific issue. For example, concerning the way law is taught. For example, in the Anglo-American area, you have people studying complete degrees before they then go into law. In the civil law areas, you have people coming straight out of school, going into law, and their core competence is the code of law. They have never studied anything outside of the code of law. And I think that is such a high degree of specialization, which is good in a lot of degrees, but it's also risky, because now that there's a serious challenge to the way law is performed, that is also a lack of diversification that is easily taken down. So I would say do as much technologically on the side as possible. I don't think, as I said, that lawyers will be replaced, but the profile needed to be in the high-end lawyering business will be adapted, even if it's just that within law firms a lot more technology will be used. So being apt at using technology, but also from the client side, that clients are way more used to going onto the internet for legal resources rather than to a lawyer. That is also something where business opportunities arise. So being good at coding is definitely a skill that I don't think it will be required, but it will be a huge asset to have.
Adrien, tell us a bit about your course you actually did. Who were the participants? Why did they come, and how did they like it?
So participants were business lawyers, mainly in the IP and IT sector. Very curious about the topic. Actually, our course was not designed at teaching them how to become programmers, because I don't think all lawyers should start become programmers. It's a very hard thing to learn. It takes time, and chacun son métier, we say in French. Everybody should stick to what they do best. But lawyers should at least understand the basics of coding and programming. Three reasons: software is eating the world; it's everywhere. Second reason, legal tech, and third reason, smart contracts, potential huge application there. What lawyers really need to do, and that's what we try to convey as a message through our workshops, is that they need to learn to think like an engineer, to translate their legal reasoning skills, which are really their value. People go to a lawyer, to lawyers for that, to tap into those legal reasoning skills, but they need to translate that in a language that a software engineer can understand. And in the context of a smart contract, if they can themselves translate plain written English into a smart contract and offer smart contracts directly to clients, that will be a huge benefit, and lawyers will have a huge edge in that, because clients are not going to accept the bulky value chain where they first pay a lawyer to write in beautiful English and then have an engineer translate that beautiful English into code. No, if you can offer both, and if you can understand and do both, well, that's a big value that you're offering to clients.
I completely agree with Clemens and Adrien that lawyers will have to be much more technologically savvy. Again, this is not new. If you, for example, a security lawyer, security of any system, for example, is very highly tied to how the system works. And lawyers who practice in security law are very technical and usually have a technologist counterpart. So along with technical skills, law schools will have to teach skills of, for example, pairing with other professionals. And on the one hand, many professions converge. On the other hand, I agree with Adrien that there will be still opportunities for lawyers to practice law and add value in the same way as there will be an opportunity for technologists to code and do what technologists do best. And at the end, it's that ability to be open-minded and collaborative and have a fundamental knowledge of what other people do, what allows best collaborations. And those are the skills that need to be taught in law school. Technology skills, collaboration skills, and frankly, being a good lawyer.
I think the largest change that smart contracts will bring will not come for the lawyers, but for the lawmakers. So because the Solidity is the programming language that Ethereum smart contracts are written in. And it is, I think, within the next 50 years, it is unlikely that a vast amount of laymen will be able to write smart contracts in Solidity or any other programming language. So there will have to be a small group of people who are good at writing contracts in this programming language, which is a huge difference to how it is now. Now contracts are written in natural language. Everyone can speak natural language and create a contract theoretically. Only a small subset of people, which also makes it very an elite circle who can write contracts, can speak these programming languages, which will become more, but by far not as it is right now that everyone speaks speaks natural languages. And once you have this situation where only few people are able to write contracts or part of contracts, then you will naturally have the creation of libraries. You will have libraries which have parts of contracts, pre-programmed parts of contracts, and then you, as an end user, you will be able to go in and pick and choose whichever part of the contract you want. And this is basically a code of law. Because then this is, as an end user, you go in and you see, well, I have these options. And if the option you want doesn't exist, you just physically you don't have the capabilities to write your own, even though theoretically you could. And once one programming language has become the de facto standard, their library and the options they provide will be the de facto code. And if you write something new, then maybe you will be able to use it, but probably your clients will be uncomfortable with it because it's not the standard. And so I see a lot of dangers for classical lawmaking that just by market power, eventually, if smart contracts become stronger and stronger, then this could be a real challenge to how lawmaking happens.
I agree that lawmakers will have a huge impact on the industry and adoption and how we practice law. In this time, because I actually interact with a number of regulators and often in a position to educate them, frankly, I can tell you that many of them could be much more educated, and we as an industry should absolutely make an effort to educate them, because uneducated regulator is a dangerous weapon. And so we need to make sure that those people who codify laws are highly educated and understand implications and technology behind it. Absolutely. I do agree that standards, whether they're going to be standardized by the industry, self-regulated, or by policymakers, will have a huge impact and direction of this industry as well. I don't necessarily have an opinion that whether it should be a self-regulation or government regulation. I'm actually very open-minded and would like to explore, again, more reasons for technologists and lawyers to be highly involved and explore the best solution to make sure that this new technology can be used to have an impact.
Well, if this happens, then there will be a real battle between lawmakers and between lawmakers and the blockchain community, because of course lawmakers can put themselves against the blockchain, but the blockchain is international, and therefore if you as a country have national laws which only have an effect inside of your country, then your country will just be a black spot on the map. And then again,
but look, can I jump in on this, because we did actually do this, for example.
Internet has, what we know for sure is that governments have a hard time letting go. There's this thing called jurisdiction, the physical space where they have an ability to control, and some governments are able to let go more than others. But it is not unusual, for example, in the internet, for some governments, for example, not allow certain applications like Google. I'm not going to be naming names here. But it's, so the governments do have quite a lot of impact, and they, as you said, they effectively black out certain parts of the map. I think again, education is a big component, and we as an industry should make an exerted effort to do that.
So we are running out of time here. So basically, I'd like to conclude.
Can I add just one thing here?
Yeah, you'll get the floor. I was just trying to get the ball in your direction, Tanja. You said you have one of the best coders of smart contracts in Europe. So let's do a little showing off here, what we can do in Europe, please. Just giving you the floor from what Clemens just said. Sorry.
I just want to say that we in Slovenia, the industry talked to the regulators, and it is not like that there is a battle, because if you're doing a lot about mass acceptance of blockchain technology, then actually regulators will listen. I know that overseas the situation is not the same, and one thing is also, I agreed with Olga, if there is no self-regulation within the industry, then we are in very, very big trouble. Because the self-regulation is a guideline to a regulator what should be done. And then we can make a step toward the smart regulation. And I don't think that actually, I agree that coding is an important part, and if we are talking today about smart contracts, they should be executed wisely. But I think here we have to see the broader picture, because if we simply ban some sort of, if you ban blockchain industry or part of it, then we also ban the progress. And this is the things that I think the lawyers are most useful here, those lawyers that understand the technology. And what we did in Slovenia is also that we opened the gates of the ICO companies, and the prime minister, the ex-prime minister, actually was there and was educated about the blockchain technology. And that really helped a lot. And yes, I think that for most lawyers, no, not for most, for some lawyers, the digitalization is the next step. And then blockchain maybe, because as we see, I don't know if in Europe, digitalization did not happen everywhere. It was promised, but we are quite a few steps from it.
That was a wonderful conclusion, Tanja, sorry.
Okay.
Summing up, blockchain is useful, but not for everything, mostly for digital stuff. Secondly, lawyers are not replaced, which is, I think, a hopeful outcome of today's session, but they might want to actually take on other skills in the technical area. And the third one is we have a new topic for the next webinar, I hope, which is the regulation of the blockchain, where we have a great speakers, I guess, here in Brussels. There's currently a lot of talk at the European Commission exactly on the spot in connection a bit with artificial intelligence. I thank you very much, everybody, for taking part in this webinar. I hope we will find a way to continue this in some form or other, and enjoy the rest of your week and have a good rest of the night of sleep, Olga, in California. Thank you very much. Here from Brussels.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.